Hello, first year scholars at Yale. My name is Patricia Licea Guerrero, Ezra Stiles, class of 2018. And as a member of First Gen Yale, I'm co-chairing this year's First Gen Yale FSY panel and discussion. You already know what the first year scholars at Yale FSY program is, but you may not know that for 6 years in a row, First Gen Yale has played a role in it. You may also be wondering what exactly First Gen Yale is. We are a group of Yale alumni, many of whom were first in our families to graduate from college or came from low income or underserved or underrepresented backgrounds. Regardless of what our lives and families were like when we were growing up, we have a few things in common. One, of course, as alumni, we all graduated from Yale. Two, we continue to stay active in the Yale family, and you are the newest members of that family. But alumni, those who graduated from Yale, are also a part of it. For us, getting our degrees from Yale meant that we did not leave the family. We just took on new roles within it. Three, we stay connected to Yale and to each other through lifelong learning opportunities, community service and engagement, career and life advice, and networking, and most importantly, through friendship. In First Gen Yale especially, we share our stories, listen to and learn from each other, and aim to have a positive impact on the lives of Yale alumni and students like you. One way First Gen Yale alums do that is by participating in this FSY program, usually by coming to campus one day, having an in-person panel discussion, taking questions from, and meeting and mingling with the first year scholars. This year, of course, we're participating virtually, like you. And what you're hearing today is the first part of our involvement, the panel discussion. I'd like to emphasize that all Yale alumni, not just those in First Gen Yale, are resources for you. But today you're going to hear from 4 alums in particular. They represent a broad range of experiences, career journeys, and interests, and they want to support and mentor current students. Like you, they all made the transition to Yale and faced some challenges along the way. It is our hope that as you listen to them describe their paths to and through Yale, you'll see that you are not alone. You too have drive and resilience, and you belong at Yale. On Saturday, July 24th, you'll get to meet these 4 alums in real time and ask them questions to continue the conversation. You probably can't wait to know who these alums are, so let me introduce them and tell you a little bit about themselves. So let's start with Ryan Davis.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ryan Davis. I'm originally from Los Angeles, California, and I graduated from 2018 with a master's degree in chemistry from the graduate school. So not a Yale College graduate, but a graduate school graduate representing the alumni here. While I spent time at Yale, I was a GSA representative, so I served on the Graduate Student Assembly. I was also an NSF fellow during my program. And since Yale, I've become the co-founder of a company called Your Advantage, which is targeting college prep and professional prep for underserved students. I currently work as a product manager and engineer for a company called Albert, which is a company within Henkel, which is a pretty large corporation, in software development. So I kind of transitioned from chemistry into the tech sector. During that time, I've served as the chair of the Henkel Aerospace Cultural Alliance Professional Development Committee. I'm president of the Henkel North America Toastmasters Club for public speaking. And I'm just another first-gen low-income alumni who's passionate about helping you guys successfully navigate the unique set of challenges that you face throughout higher education and beyond.
All right, thank you, Ryan. Mukunda, can you go next?
Sure. Hi, my name is Dr. Mukunda Abdul-Baki. I am a proud graduate of Yale College, Morse College, class of 92, and class of 98 for Yale School of Medicine. So I spent a total of 8 years in New Haven. So I can prove that it is possible to stay there for an extended period of time and enjoy it. I did a 1-year master's program at Harvard for master's in public health. That's something that if you consider doing grad work at Yale, something that's really encouraged is that you can do cross degrees. So we had colleagues that not only got a Yale Med School degree, but may have gotten a Yale Law School degree or a PhD in art history, biological sciences, et cetera. Being on a campus like that just leaves so much open for you and available for you. It was a great experience for me. It's something that, even though I'm from the New Jersey area, but I practice in rural southwestern Virginia, so I don't get up north as much as I'd like to. But when I do get up and get to connect with my friends that I made from Yale, it's always a really good time. And actually, like, all of my best friends, the people that know me the best, that are the godparents of my children, and I'm the godparents of their children, were all met at either Yale Med School or Yale undergrad. So the bonds that I made there have been lifelong bonds that will continue for many generations.
Thank you, Mukunda. Iveti, can you go next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Yvette Solis Rivers, and I graduated from Yale College in '96. I was in Grace Hopper College. And I was born in Corpus Christi, Texas, and raised in St. Petersburg, Florida. And the first time I ever left the South in the winter was when I went to Yale. So it was a big culture shock for me in many ways. I got an MBA from George Washington University. But I also was, like many of you, was the first in my family to go to college. Actually, I was the first to graduate from high school, and I also come from a low income background. So I'm really happy to be here to be able to provide some insight to all of you. After I graduated from Yale, I actually taught second grade in Southeast DC with Teach for America. But after that, I shifted to a career in IT management consulting, and I've been doing that for almost 25 years. And I am currently an independent consultant, have my own business, and I have a contract with the U.S. Treasury's Office of the Comptroller of the Currency. I'm also very active in alumni volunteering with the Yale Club of Washington, D.C. I've been serving as the president. I've also helped out a bit with First Gen Yale, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, Yvette. And last but not least, Harley.
Hey everyone, my name is Harley. I am a recent grad. I was Yale 2020. I was in Pauli Murray College as one of the newer ones. I grew up for most of my life in Las Vegas. I immigrated to Las Vegas when I was just 5 years old. And I was, similar to Yvette, also the first in my family to graduate from high school and first to matriculate to college as well. So that process was pretty daunting once I got onto campus. I knew I really wanted to do something in the private sector. So I studied economics because I thought it was a pretty straightforward path over there. But along with my studies in economics, I took a lot of classes in psychology as well, and realized that the school district I came from was not the best school district in the world or in America. It was pretty bad. And I wanted to come back home, spend some time with my family, and give back to my community. So after graduation, I decided to go into education instead. So I joined Teach for America, and I finished my first year in teaching high school math back home. Unfortunately, it's not at the high school that I went to, but I would have liked it to be. But it's been a great experience so far. I have another year left, and I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you, Harley. And we're actually also going to introduce Lisa. Could you please give a brief introduction?
Sure. Thank you, Patty. I just want to say hi to everyone. I'm Lisa Chapman, class of '81 MBA from the Yale School of Management. And I'm also a Stanford undergrad. And I'm proud to be founder and chair of First Gen Yale, which is a shared interest group of the Yale Alumni Association. We're now in our 5th year, and our mission is to support alumni and students who share similar backgrounds, being first or second generation to graduate from college and from low income backgrounds. And what we do is we get together and we share our stories. And we share our stories about careers and life experiences and challenges we've had to overcome, and those strategies that we've had to develop along the way to be who we are. So we're glad to be here tonight. It's our honor and privilege to be together. And this is a diverse group of alumni from various backgrounds, class years, generations, who will share with you their experiences and hopefully help you navigate Yale and beyond. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and we look forward to seeing you again on Saturday, July 24th. All the best, and come join us at First Gen Yale.
Thank you, Lisa. Before I turn it over to Professor Laguna to start the conversation and introduce himself really briefly, my name is Patricia Alicia Guerrero. As I said, I graduated from Styles in 2018. I graduated with a history of science, medicine, and public health degree. This was after I decided that biomedical engineering and medical school was actually maybe not for me. I'm also from a low-income background. I'm from South Central Los Angeles. And I'm really happy to be here, really happy to host this and share at least a part of my experience. And now I'm going to turn it over to Professor Laguna. Could you give us a brief introduction?
Absolutely. Hello, FSYers. My name is Professor Albert Sergio Laguna. I've been a professor at Yale since 2012. I'm faculty in the American Studies program and the Ethnicity, Race, and Migration program. I'm also affiliated faculty with the Spanish Department and Latin American Studies. My research, I work on Cuba, specifically literature and popular culture in Cuba and Cuban America. And I'm currently writing a book about the relationship between race and comedy on a philosophical, theoretical level. I teach courses on Introduction to Latinx Studies, Race and Comedy, History and Culture of Cuba. And this is my first year as FSY faculty director, and I'm so excited to be in this position, to get to know all of you, and to get to know more about how FSY works, right? Because I've worked with so many students in FSY over the years, and to be on this end of it, right, to understand the broader logics and goals of the program is really, really satisfying and exciting for me. I'm also first generation born in this country, first generation college. So I know what a lot of you are feeling and going through. So I hope I can also help you on that end, right? Not only academically, but to help you navigate the complexities of coming to Yale from your own backgrounds, cultural, familial, economic, etc. So thank you so much for being here and for being ready to enjoy our panel. My job here today is to moderate the panel, right? And essentially to get out of the way, right? So we can hear from our fantastic alums. I just want to say it's an honor and a pleasure to moderate this panel. I can't wait to hear from our alums. I'm grateful for them taking the time. And I also want to say thanks to Lisa Chapman, chair of First Gen Yale Alumni Group, for organizing and convening us. So I really appreciate that as well. All right, let's get into it. First question for our alums. Looking back, what was your experience like at Yale? I'd love to hear a little bit about your journey throughout the 4 years, navigating this place, the challenges, the triumphs. Lay it on me. Who wants to go first?
I can. Okay, go ahead, Ryan. I'll follow you. I think you should go first.
Okay, I'll give you the graduate student perspective on this. So I think my time at Yale was probably one of the best times of my life and probably one of the hardest times of my life. Being a first-gen student, let me tell you, imposter syndrome is a very, very real thing. And that hit me pretty hard coming to Yale. Definitely struggled with feeling like I belonged there. And kind of fighting the sense that, I wasn't up to snuff with the rest of my peers. While at the same time, I think I grew more than I ever had in my life when I was there, and just absolutely cherished the time having these really rich intellectual discussions and being able to learn a whole bunch of different things while I was there. In terms of navigating, I think my strategy for that was to make friends with people I connected with and use resources and just get involved in everything I could. So I looked at any leadership opportunities that came up and took those, made sure I was involved in different committees, talked to as many professors, faculty, students that I could, and really just tried to take it all in and kind of let Yale continue to shape the person that I was becoming through that experience. So yeah, I guess summarizing it, again, it was a very difficult time fighting the imposter syndrome, but I think once I overcame that, or at least learned to kind of push that down a little bit and let everything else come out, Yale was an incredibly rewarding time while I was there, and I look back on it with great fondness.
Thanks, Ryan. I actually have similar feelings, a little bit different. But yeah, before I say anything else, I do want to say that I have a deep gratitude and loyalty to Yale. I'm sure all the alums here do, just because Yale changed my life, right? Dramatically changed my life. Like I said before, I came from a particularly poor background. when just to give you a little example of how much of a change it was for me when I got into Yale, my Mexican American mother got off welfare. And when she was getting off welfare, she went into one of these vocational training programs. This is like right after I left. And her reading level was assessed at third grade reading level. So it kind of gives you a sense of like how dramatic that shift was for me. And so, I went to a public high school in Florida. I did well academically there, but it just did not prepare me for the academics at Yale. And so that plus, the cultural shift, just the environmental shift from my palm trees and my pastels to the Gothic darkness of the Northeast, it was a huge shock for me that I didn't expect. I had a hard time. I really did. Particularly my first year, it makes me sad to say it because of my deep love for Yale, that it was a dark time for me. And I'm just being honest because I know that some of you, as you embark on these challenges, you might end up, depending on your situation, kind of going that way. And I hope that what I can share with you today will help you kind of keep that darkness at bay. But in terms of how I navigated it, eventually, sounds like it took a little bit longer than Ryan. Eventually, I got better each year. My grades got better each year as I kind of came to get adjusted to the academics, as I got more involved with extracurriculars. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in one of the other questions, but that community, building my family there was a huge factor of like how I got through Yale and ultimately made it a positive experience in the end. And then just, the other way I think I got through it is I just never gave up, even when it was hard. I continued to just pick myself back up and keep trying. And that was key for me in navigating Yale.
Just to piggyback off of some of what everyone said, it's a different experience. I now am old enough to have a 20-year-old child who is navigating college during a pandemic, but he's finishing his sophomore year. But just the newness, the trying to become a young adult, knowing that you're responsible for waking yourself up, for getting to your classes on time, all of those things, you're responsible for looking halfway presentable when you do leave the house. That's a big jump. And I think that's going to be a big jump for everyone. What I found most helpful at Yale, and honestly, I have to say that as far as racial issues, I felt like I was more alone in high school than I was at Yale. At Yale, I found this incredible community of other highly successful, highly intelligent African-American students. At my school, at my high school, I was the unicorn. I was this kind of exemplary, standout Black girl that, knew all of this stuff and did well. Whereas at Yale, I didn't have to be a unicorn anymore. There were so many other fantastic people. I just found my community there, where I did Black church at Yale. I was an active member of the African American Cultural Center. We would always, I'll date myself that we didn't have the smartphone technology and the ability to record stuff. When Cosby Show and A Different World came on, you had to be at the Cultural Center at 8 o'clock to see it, because there wasn't going to be a repeat. So, we'd all pack in there and watch the shows together and bond over that. And I don't know what it's like now. My son, for a lot of different reasons, decided that he wanted to go to an HBCU. So he's at Morehouse College. So I don't know what it's like now, but, there was always that discussion of why do all the Blacks sit together? Why, and it wasn't, to me, it wasn't a thing of negating or not reaching out to other people. It was just that comfort zone. And I made a bunch. When I was my first year in med school, actually, I had a roommate who was Korean American, and she was one of the head people of the Korean drumming club. And so I got to know a bunch of people in the Asian Student Association. I had good friends that were in the Puerto Boricua. I just really had a lot of community within the people of color community. And that, I think, made it easier for me. You know, and I think a lot of those things are still there, and probably even more, I would say. So for me, that's what made it feel like home. Everyone has to figure out what's gonna be their thing, like whether it's a dancing community or a music community. But even though I was pre-med and stayed in the sciences, the science people weren't my family. You know, they pre-meds were cutthroat then, and I don't know if they still are, but they were pretty cutthroat then. So that was not my kinfolk. My kinfolk were other Black and brown people that I sought out and just felt very at home and easy with. We had ethnic counselors, we had freshman counselors, just a lot of support that I appreciated Yale for offering from the get-go.
Thank you so much, Mukunda. That's actually a great segue to the second question about extracurriculars and like life at Yale, right? I'd love to hear about from all of you if there were courses that stand out that were particularly impactful, extracurriculars, leadership opportunities, that kind of made your Yale experience your Yale experience, right? And if you can also add, would you do anything differently about how you approach those extracurriculars, those other activities outside of the classroom? Who wants to jump in first? Maybe someone we haven't heard from yet.
In terms of extracurriculars, I can split it up into the fun ones and the leadership development ones. In terms of the fun ones, when I first got onto campus, I really wanted to step out of my shell and be a little bit more artsy and creative. So I joined DanceWorks, and I also wanted to audition for a cappella as well. Even though I've never sang in my life before, I always wanted to be a singer. I've never danced in my life before. It was really bad. We had a show. I didn't tell any of my suite mates about the show because I didn't want them to see me at the show. So it was a really fun experience, even though at the time it felt like I was pushing myself out of my shell a lot. I think that's one piece of advice I would go back and give myself is continue to do those things that you thought you would never do, because after you graduate from college, you don't really, it's a little bit more difficult to find those extracurriculars. It's hard to find just a club like DanceWorks or join an a cappella group. You have to put in a little bit more effort to find those. So I think just find a random club and join it and see if you like it. In terms of the leadership development, extracurriculars, I was a first-year counselor in my fourth year. So in my final year, it was nice because it felt like my entire Yale experience was kind of going full circle. When I went in there, I was pretty lost, but then when I was on my way out, I was able to be a figure of like a mentor to first years coming in. So it was an extremely meaningful experience, and I really highly recommend it. Y'all are still first year, so it's going to be a few years before you consider it, but it was an awesome experience, and you'll be talking to your FROCOs pretty soon if they haven't reached out already. But yeah, they enjoyed talking to you. That's why they signed up for the job.
So I can share a little bit about this too. So I forgot to mention in my intro that I was a sociology with psychology major. But for me, I think my extracurriculars were even more impactful in helping me get through Yale. As I mentioned earlier, I was very, very active in the a cappella singing community. I was in one group for 4 years, and then I was in a senior group of all women. And looking back, those groups became like from early on, because I started in the first singing group right away in the fall of my first year, but they became my family from early on. So even though I think I kind of walked around with a big chip on my shoulder, especially the first couple of years, I can't imagine how much worse it would have been for me, or how lonely it would have been without that support of that community. So I don't have regrets. I think at the time I used to ask myself, should I be spending so much time with the singing group stuff? But looking back, it was so important for my survival there. I don't think I took as much advantage of the academic resources that I should have, but in the end, I did very well professionally, and none of that hurt me. So I guess I wouldn't really make any changes at all.
Harley, I just want to spotlight what you said, because I tell students that all the time. You're here for 4 years. When you leave, it gets progressively harder to take that class on pottery, because like rent, right? So like while you're here, take advantage of these fantastic courses, these extracurriculars that expose you to things that, maybe you're not good at, or you won't be good at. I'm not saying, Harley, you weren't a good dancer at the end of it, right? But just like take some risks, right? Allow yourself to explore all the wonderful things, right? It's a wonderful time to do that. So thank you so much for spotlighting that. And if you can sing as well. I cannot. So I'm glad you can, Yvette, and so many other Yaleys can. Let's get to our next question then. Can you share a bit about how you brought your own cultural and home experience to bear on your time at Yale, and how that may have shaped your experience and voice in your time here?
I think I may have briefly mentioned this in my introduction, but I'm Mexican American, and my family and just my culture has always been a huge part of my life and very important to me. I will say that when I got to Yale, I didn't initially join like a cultural heritage group, which sounds like it's going to sound like at odds with what I'm going to say next. But I was mostly just involved as a bystander at La Casa, where I would show up to events and meet people and do things like that. But I wasn't one of the people planning or being necessarily one of the main people at the event. However, at the time, I failed to realize that you don't have to join a group that's solely about, expressing yourself, expressing your culture in this one very particular way. Like you can find groups that do this anyway. So I joined Sabrosura, which is the Latinx dance group on campus, my first year. And I ended up staying with them throughout. And I didn't at the time think of them as a place where I could express my full culture, because dancing is part of culture, and Latinx dancing was very much a huge part of like my upbringing. But I didn't think of it as being a place where I can share the whole culture, so like food, and talk about, traditions and all of that. And for me, finding a group like Sabrosura, where even though it started off as a dance group, I was able to really talk to people from different Latin American countries, and not. We had some people that weren't necessarily Latinx, but they were interested in the culture, and we got to do a lot of exchange, and also just kind of affirm what we were doing growing up and what we stood for at that moment. And I want to say that on the other hand, just accepting that a lot of us were first gen. The group wasn't a first gen group. We just so happened to have a lot of first gen people, and having these conversations and realizing that we have a lot of strengths as first gen. Because I do think that going in, I was maybe a little self-conscious about being first gen, about coming from a low income community, coming from a community that, barely had people even going to college, period. But being a part of a group like this, I was able to kind of affirm that, our families, even if we were the first, like we weren't the first smart people. It's like these opportunities just happened to present themselves to us, but there was a lot of strength in what we learned from our parents. Even if they didn't necessarily know about the college process, they knew about other things, and we benefited from that. So for me, that's how I kept in touch with my cultural and my family background, through groups like this, where I could just talk to people that happened to have the same background, even if it wasn't the point of the group.
So like I mentioned, imposter syndrome for me was a really big part of my first years at Yale. In addition to that, I came as an older student. I did not do well in high school. I tried to drop out at one point because I hated school so much. And I actually spent many years as a professional musician, actually outside of that. So that was my first career. It didn't work out. And then when I decided that is not what I wanted to do, I was like, I'm going to go be a doctor. So, like I mentioned, I started in community college, and I went to 4 different community colleges because it's incredibly difficult to find classes. And then from there, I transferred to a state school, where I just kind of spent my entire life in a lab, and I wound up in Yale. And this kind of put me in this position where I was with a bunch of my peers who didn't necessarily like understand like where I came from, and I didn't really understand where they came from. The first gen group is pretty limited when you look at the entire scope of the community at Yale. So I think finding those people was a little bit difficult for me at first. And finding my own voice within that was also different too, because I had a lot of grit in me. I had a lot of experience behind me, and I had a whole lot of, again, just experience with things that people didn't traditionally go through that I wanted to share and be able to express. And I didn't really know how to do that. In addition to that, like many of us, communicating that with your family is also difficult because Yale changes you. And when you come out of there, and even when you're going through it, you really become a different person. The way you think about things becomes much more global, much larger than yourself. And a lot of the people that, not that you leave behind, but a lot of the people that stay where they are, where you go to Yale, like they don't go through those same experiences. So I think the struggle I faced was being able to find myself within Yale and really be comfortable with the fact that I was now a Yalie, and I could function on this kind of higher level and have these deep intellectual discussions with people, enjoy that, but also make sure I didn't lose grasp of my roots and lose grasp of how to communicate with people that might not have gone through the same kind of experience. So I think ultimately, and this is just kind of advice for all of you, is you just kind of have to let it happen and just embrace it. And you got to be okay with who you are. And just, accept the fact that you're Yalie and some people aren't, and that's okay. And also, be able to accept the fact that you might be different from some of the other Yalies. And again, that is okay. And I think one of the reasons I love this group so much is because there's a lot of us out there who do come from non-traditional backgrounds, who didn't have the privilege that maybe some of our colleagues and fellow students did. And like, we're a support group for each other. And you really just need to just embrace that. Be happy for where you are, and just enjoy Yale for what it is, and let it kind of change your life how it did for so many of us.
Thank you, Ryan. Anyone else want to speak to that question?
I can chime in a little bit, just in case any of the students out there have similar backgrounds to me. So this is another one of those areas where I kind of look back and had some lessons learned, because I don't think I found my own cultural voice at Yale as much as I should have and would have liked to. So I am of mixed ethnicity. As I mentioned, my mother's Mexican American, my father was Irish American. So because of this, even before Yale, I always struggled with this sense of belonging. It gets a little bit back to what Ryan was talking about with the imposter syndrome. But even before Yale, my mom's side of the family and both my father's side of the family always treated me like I was the other, never quite belonging in either place. And at Yale, because I didn't fit neatly into one cultural category, it sort of worsened some of those feelings of imposter syndrome, of me, this feeling of, I wasn't worthy of being there. So one regret that I have for my time at Yale is that I didn't confront these feelings more. Like without realizing it, I made a lot of assumptions about what other people thought of me. That I, looking back now that I'm older and wiser, I think were completely false and fabricated in my mind. They just stem from my own insecurity. So, I guess if there's anyone out there in the students that sort of kind of have those same feelings of not quite belonging in one group, where you're constantly straddling these different worlds, whether it be the Yale and home, the rich and the poor, or the different ethnic groups that you, I guess my advice to you would be to definitely confront it, because there's just amazing communities at Yale that would be probably a lot more welcoming than you might think.
Thank you, Yvette. Anyone else?
Yeah, one thing that I would want to, it was the question before this as far as regrets. The one regret that I can remember about my time at Yale was choosing to study for some microbiology test instead of going to see Ray Charles at Woolsey Hall. You have to realize that Yale has the most amazing master teas. Well, I know that we don't use master anymore. What's the new term? Because when I was there, we did master's teas.
Head of college. Head of
What is it? Head of college? So then are they called head of college teas?
Yeah, it's the head of college events. It's
oh, okay.
Yeah.
So in any case, you know, I told you I was class of 92. So so we had master's teas. I'll use the term that we did used to use. And we had Desmond Tutu, we had the Dalai Lama. We had some incredible people come to Yale during the time that I was there. And so you just got to balance time wisely, but there are going to be some times when you're just like, whoa, this person's here tonight. And you know, I would take that opportunity. So, and so I never got to see Ray Charles live. And so that is a regret.
I see why that would be a regret. Yeah, it's the part of being at Yale is like, do I see the talk by the Pulitzer Prize winner or the lecture by the Nobel Prize winner? They're scheduled at the same time, right? So it's kind of an embarrassment of riches. But yes, it's part of the time management, right? Yes, and Harley said they're called college teas. Thank you very much, Harley. And were you going to say something, Harley? You're going to jump in there?
Just building off what Dr. McKinnon mentioned about making use of the fun resources on campus. When it comes to college teas, those are definitely really, really cool. I just wanted to take this opportunity to talk about resources in general as well, because I think that was one thing that I was pretty stubborn about in my first year and second and third year was not asking for help as much as I should have. I was pretty stubborn because I got through high school pretty well, middle school, like most of school pretty well on my own. I didn't really need anyone's help for the most part. And that was part of my identity going into Yale. And I felt pretty confident about my own abilities to get through. And if I could give myself another piece of advice, it would be to go to office hours a little bit more, or simply to, since office hours were with professors, I was kind of intimidated at first talking to professors. So I think a good segue into finding help is actually looking for like student tutors instead, since these student tutors are around your same age, maybe like a year or two older, but they're not a PhD Nobel Prize winning person that's really intimidating to talk to. So in terms of academic resources, reaching out to student tutors, I think is one thing I would have done a lot more. In addition to that, I think other resources on campus, mental health was also one thing that wasn't talked a lot about in high school for me or within my family, but one really cool thing about Yale is it's a lot more visible on campus. I forget the statistics on it, but a good majority of students have seen a therapist and went to mental health at least like once during their time there. I forgot the numbers. I don't want to put a number out there, but it's a pretty high number. But I think it took me until like my fourth year, my junior or my senior year before I went to see a therapist. And it's really cool because it's there for you. The resources are there, so you can just schedule an appointment if you need someone to talk to.
And touching on what Harley said, you know, there are student tutors. There are also residential college tutors who are graduate students. So I was a tutor for Grace Hopper the entire time I was there, and we're also there as a resource. And the residential college tutors are a great way to kind of segue into research opportunities and internships, because we know about a lot of those that's going on. You know, sometimes it can be intimidating to talk to faculty members, and it's probably a little less intimidating to talk to one of the grad students who might be running one of your labs or just helping with something in the residential college. And because we're grad students, we have very close relationships with the faculty that we work with. So, you know, like Harley mentioned, like reach out to faculty, use all the resources you can, but graduate students are also there to help you. You know, we were undergrads just a couple years before, so we definitely feel your pain in that. And most of us are more than happy to help you out and put you in contact with faculty that can help you with internships, research opportunities, jobs, et cetera.
And if I could just jump in as the faculty member here, come see us, right? What makes Yale different from a lot of other places is that faculty expect and look forward to working with undergrads, right? That's not true for a lot of research one institutions where there's not a ton of interaction between faculty and undergraduates. At Yale, that is the norm, right? So I know it's intimidating, right? And I talk about this in my my interview for Faculty Perspectives. There's some strategies to get in touch with faculty, to connect with faculty on research opportunities and in office hours. So I won't go on and on about that. Watch it's a plug for my video on Canvas for Faculty Perspectives, but please do also reach out to faculty, because sometimes we're waiting around in office hours for someone to stop by and no one does. So please keep us company in office hours. Okay, should we get to our next question? How did your background and time at Yale lead you down to the career path you currently find yourself on, right? Do you have any clear examples when the light bulb went off when you said, all right, I'm going to major in this and then maybe I'll do this? Or maybe it was you did one major in college and then you went on a totally different direction, right? People love to hear origin stories. You're all very successful. How'd you get to where you got to, right?
I could start. So yes, my background definitely impacted my career choices in two ways. So when I was at Yale, I was so overwhelmed with gratitude for how people had changed my life that I really, at the time, I really wanted to figure out how to give back. And that was what inspired me to join Teach for America initially. But what happened and also why I majored in sociology with psychology, because that's really what I was focused on at the time. But what happened to me after that was, I think, a very common experience for first-gen alums, or first-gen low-income alums, which is I got, I'm 2 years out from graduating from Yale, someone coming from, a childhood of significant poverty. I'm talking about begging and stealing for food poverty. And here I am. I got into Yale College and I was still poor. And my mother and my sisters, they don't have money. They can't pay their bills. And here, the one who got this opportunity to go to this university is poor. She's practically, a teacher in the inner city of DC. And so I had this epiphany that, you know what, I didn't want to be poor, and I wanted to be able to help my family. And so that I shifted my career at that time. It was when the beginning of, when the internet was taking off, and there were lots of opportunities, and I shifted. And, part of me always felt like, I hear about the stories of the Yaleys who are like literally changing lives and giving back to the world. And I have so much respect. And I wish well, maybe I should have done that, but I had to do what felt right to me at the time. And, because of the choices I ended up making, my family, whenever in the past 25 years, anybody's in trouble, they have one person they can call. Who can help. And that's part of my sort of first gen story. And, I don't have regrets. I enjoy what I do. I do it well. But yeah, definitely my background and then my experience at Yale contributed to all of that and those choices I ultimately made in my career.
To echo some of what was already said, I proudly tell my oldest son and anyone else who will listen to me that I wouldn't be a doctor today without the help of tutoring. I received tutoring for organic chemistry and for physics, which are kind of like the benchmark kind of pre-med classes that you have to take. Biology came really easy to me. Organic, general chemistry came really easy to me, but orgo and physics were just did not click. And so I used the resources because of being low income. My tutoring was free, and I was able to be successful in those classes. I think also to take advantage of the Career Center, which again, I hate to sound like an old person, but in my day, it was on Hillhouse Avenue. I don't know where it is now, but that was literally responsible. The lady in there just knew me by name. I spent many an afternoon in there. She reworked my resume. She found internships for me to apply for. And literally every summer that I was at Yale, I was doing something towards moving me towards becoming a doctor and doing research within medical science. So my first year, I was at the University of Colorado at Denver. The second year, I got into a program for minority students who wanted to be doctors at Harvard. So I spent the whole summer at Harvard, and then the junior year, I spent some of that summer doing test prep for the MCAT, but also even within that, like you have to not be ashamed of of where you're at. Like, I'm very proud to say, because of what I did at Yale, and the success that I'm experiencing, my kids don't have to apply for financial aid. But I had to apply for financial aid for the, what did I do? I think I did the Kaplan review for MCAT. And I think basically back then, it was like $1,000 or $1,500. And all you had to do was bring in, show them that you were getting some financial aid from Yale, and they reduced it to 50% or 25%. And again, having the leg up from being able to take a Kaplan course, and that's not something they really readily advertise, but it requires being, going forward and asking, being assertive, and just trying. One of the hallmarks. So I've always honored the upbringing that I've had. And one of the hallmarks of my mom has always been ask, all they can do is say no. And so that kind of has steered me throughout my career and everything else.
So my professional career has been a bit unconventional. I say that because I went in thinking that the only real jobs you could have were, you know, a doctor, engineer, and a lawyer. And my story is not going to really make sense until the end, but I promise I'll bring it all together. And so I started biomedical engineering because I did have a sincere interest in it, and I did very well in my science classes in high school. And I thought I was going to do biomedical engineering, and I was going to keep being pre-med. But what I failed to realize was that although I was very interested in the subject, I wasn't actually very interested in the subject as something that I would want to consider and, you know, study for the rest of my life. And I didn't know how to make that distinction. I thought if you liked, you know, a topic, that's what you had to do for your career. And so it took me a while to figure out that I actually did not want a science job after graduating, and I struggled to find something else. The end of my sophomore year, early junior year, I switched into the history of science, medicine, and public health major, which I will say it helped me a lot just to keep my scientific interest, but maybe pivot to something that was a little more my style. I really like to read. I really like to write. I like to analyze text. And this major really brought all of those together, even though I didn't know what I wanted to do career-wise with this major. However, what I want to do is give you all hope, because my senior year, and this is the path that I'm following now, my senior year, I took a animal law class at the law school, actually. And I loved it. I only took it because I'm very huge. I'm a vegan, like love animals, all that. And I took it for fun. It was my senior year. I wanted to try it. The opportunity presented itself. I went. And I loved the class. And since taking that class, I decided that actually, even though I know I said in the beginning, there are only doctors, engineers, and lawyers, I hadn't actually considered a legal career at all. I didn't think I was interested. It never crossed my mind. And this class, solely this class, made me realize that actually maybe, you know, this idea that I was always a STEM person and I had to follow a science career, that maybe that actually wasn't completely right, and I would be happy in a different field. So I took the class, loved the class, but this is my senior year. And I just want to say that even though my transcript had very little to no legal inclination, the Yale degree, like having that Yale on my resume, has opened so many doors. And I've been able to work as a paralegal for the past 3 years, and no one questions it. No one is saying, oh, but you didn't take any legal classes, or you don't have any legal background. It's just seeing my interest during interviews and seeing that, you know, I have a cohesive story. It's like this class started it, that's why I'm so late, that allowed me to get these jobs in the first place. And so it doesn't matter if you don't know what you want to do in undergrad, because ultimately this Yale, having that on your resume, I know we keep saying that, but it's going to save you. If you want to pivot, you can do that. If you want to do whatever, you just have to make it cohesive, and you have your reasons, it will be cohesive.
Anyone else want to jump in on that? Moments when you're like, oh, this is what I want to do. It kind of light bulb went off, like came out of the heavens.
I think I'll talk to that very quickly. Echoing what Mukunda said, I think a really key takeaway from that is the worst anyone can ever say when you're asking for help is no. and then you're basically in the place you started. So you don't really lose any ground by asking. You can only gain from that situation. So ask for help, ask for help, ask for help. You can only benefit from it. And like Yvette mentioned, I think one of the things I struggled with finding my career is, I came into Yale very poor. I grew up poor. I think one of the most memorable parts of college for me, I put myself through college, and my budget for food during college was $20 a week. That's what I came up with. And I distinctly remember this one time I splurged on meat, and I bought myself some crappy cut of steak, and I cooked it in a glass pan in the oven, which I look back now and I'm horrified by because I'm a big cook now, and I can't believe I destroyed a steak like that. And I put it on the counter, and the pan shattered, and I had glass shards all through my meat, and I had no money for food. And so I spent that week picking pieces of glass out of my food and trying to eat it very carefully, and just realizing that I'm just in the depths of poverty right now at this point. And when I got to Yale, it was really, really important to me to just not be poor. And I think my mindset through college and through Yale was really just to escape that situation and not really focus so much on what I was actually interested in, but just focusing on not being poor anymore. And part of me really regrets that, because I think I looked at a lot of paths that I wasn't really interested in. Initially I wanted to go to med school. I took the MCAT. I volunteered and taught for an MCAT review company. And then, as I was applying to med school, I was like, no, this is what I want to do. And I wanted to do a PhD program. And I got into the PhD program, and halfway through, I was like, you know what? I don't want to be a bench chemist, which is why I have a master's degree. I didn't complete that. And I realized I was just kind of chasing a paycheck. And ultimately, they left me pretty dissatisfied with what I was doing. And so I finally just was honest with myself, and I'm like, hey, I like technical stuff. I happen to be very good at organic chemistry. I love physics, but I'm also very creative. I had a music background. And so I needed to find a career where I had some sort of technical substance there with some creativity. I kind of wound up in product, where basically, I work a lot with people. I work a lot with big data, very, very technical, but also, I need to come up with a lot of ideas and put a lot of ideas together. And I absolutely love what I do now. Luckily, financially, it's a pretty good career on top of that, but it took me a really long time to accept that I was not the traditional student. I wasn't following a traditional pathway. I wasn't going to go to med school and be the trauma surgeon I thought I was going to be. But hey, I love tech. I love working in product management and bringing ideas from a big source of people together and making something really, really cool. So sorry, very long-winded answer for that, but my background really, really shaped where I am now. And it took just, again, this kind of theme of accepting who you are and being okay with it and letting that kind of drive your decisions. And, everything's going to be okay. We all went to Yale. At the end of the day, we're going to be okay. So you just go with it.
This is really helpful and revealing, I think, because, I believe off camera before we started recording, Mukunda, you talked about how, or I saw it in your bio, how you always wanted to be a doctor, right? How that was kind of clear in your head. But then other people, it's not a straight line, right? They started doing one thing, they went another direction, changed majors, changed careers, right? So, some of you might have a very clear sense of what you want to do, and that's great. But maybe you have a sense and it changes, and that's fine too. That's part of the journey in college. So, embrace that, embrace the possibilities here, and be ready to shift if things don't feel quite right in another direction that could be more satisfying, right? Anyone else want to jump in on that question before we move on to the next one?
I think just to tag on to the be ready to shift, I think that's really the truly unique thing about having the Yale degree and making the relationships is that if and when you want to shift, there's so many people out there to touch base. I started a podcast a couple of years ago, ended up interviewing a bunch of Yaleys for it and had such a great time doing it. They reached out to me. We were, symbiotic on it. It wasn't any type of money-making venture, but I think the same would apply if it was a money-making venture. Or even now, I've been doing clinical medicine for more than 20 years, and I have the master's in public health. Now I'm thinking of shifting more toward policy and programmatic work. And again, Yaleys are showing up for me to talk with me about my career prospects, to talk with me about grant writing, to just be a sounding board and to connect me with different people. It's an immense network of the top people in their fields, and having the shared background, because most of the people that I'm corresponding with now concerning the policy work are not people that I was breaking bread with at Yale, but because of that shared bond, it's just an open door. And I would do the same thing if someone calls and says, "Hey, my kid's interested in med school. Can you spend a few minutes talking with them?" It's not, it would never be a problem, because it just has been that type of experience for me that I continue to tap into. And having the degree from Yale just means that you can swivel and change paths and continue to grow it lifelong.
Great. All right. So let's move on to our next question here. How would you suggest students take advantage of what FSY and Yale more broadly has to offer? Resources, advice, counselors, faculty, research and travel opportunities, networking with students and alums. Were there any experiences or those aforementioned resources that were especially helpful to you?
I'm pretty biased for this question because I was a FROCO, and I think the FROCOs are a really unique part of Yale. And they're basically paid by Yale to help first years. That's basically their job. And Yale has a bunch of resources, and it can get really intimidating at times. So you can think of your FROCO as essentially a Yale Google machine. Their job, they spent countless weeks, countless days. I forgot how long the training was. The training was kind of long, but they did a lot of training to understand mostly everything there is to Yale in terms of resources. And if they don't know, they're that conduit to the dean or head of college that they can talk to and get those answers for you. So it's intimidating and kind of overwhelming how many resources there are at Yale. What's the difference between the writing center tutors versus the residential college tutors? Like small questions like that. Yeah, I think going to your FROCO and asking them these questions is definitely what my first step would be, because they're not as intimidating as like a professor, because they're just a fourth year student, and their job is to help you.
Great, first point of contact, absolutely. Others?
Okay, I can jump in. I'll start just like personal experience, because I think it's easier for me to go from there. Almost all of the opportunities that I've had over the summer or just during the year, fellowships, summer jobs, research, just like enrichment opportunities, have almost entirely all been through friends who have referred me, back to the Yale office, but they would kind of filter these opportunities for me. So for example, for fellowships, I was able to study abroad 1 year and work abroad another year because a friend told me about the Light Fellowship. So through the Light Fellowship, I was able to study Chinese in Beijing for 1 summer. And then we have a Student Summer Award, which I think that the name might have changed. So look out for that. But the Summer Award is actually the same as your financial aid. So whatever percentage you pay, so let's say if you're on full financial aid, you will get the full summer award. I hope that's still the case, but you should look into it. And it's a fantastic opportunity because you can get a job in a foreign country through OCS actually, or a similar opportunity, and the opportunity will be paid. So even if the internship is not, cannot pay you because a lot of these nonprofits are not necessarily always able to for summer jobs, this summer award fills in that gap. So I was able to work for a nonprofit in Hong Kong solely because a friend who looked into it, who was interested in these programs, alerted me to the opportunity as soon as they opened, and it was through OCS. So through OCS, I applied, I got the opportunity, and then through the summer award, I was able to pay for it because there was no way I could live in Hong Kong just for a summer for this job that wasn't going to pay me. Plugging in OCS a little more, they were really helpful for that summer internship, which I did the summer between my junior and my senior year. They were also very helpful in fixing my resume before I started applying to actual jobs during my senior year, so for post-graduation, because I realized that the resume that I had, I completely switched paths. I was initially science and public health, and then I decided to go into the legal field. And they were really able to tailor my experiences, which were not necessarily legal, to fit the legal market and help me get a job in that.
I can add like a follow-up question to this, because the question I ask is about resources, right? Advice from counselors, faculty, etc. Was there experience you had here that stands out, was specific, like particularly mind-blowing, something that you did here that was exciting, an opportunity that you had because you were at Yale, right? And I'll give you some time to think about this, by talking a little bit about things I've done with students, which is not last year because of this whole, COVID, but the 3 years before that, I taught a class called History and Culture of Cuba, where we took 18 students to Cuba over spring break for 2 weeks, right? And that was made possible. Students paid nothing. They actually got a stipend to spend in Cuba, right? Over 2 weeks, going all over the island for lectures. Didn't go to the beach. That didn't happen at all, right? And going to just visit important cultural monuments and getting to know the island on a firsthand basis, right? So can you say something, like, is there something that you did here that Yale made possible? Mukunda, maybe you didn't go to see that concert, but maybe there's another one that you can talk about. Students love to hear these stories.
The thing that I was also that I really appreciated at Yale was because of the financial resources, they did a lot of development of student leaderships. Like there was an office where if you had any type of idea or you wanted to start a group, it was just very easy. And I remember I had done several classes at the Child Study Center, and I had worked at one of the Head Start programs in New Haven. And I remember how transformative Sesame Street had been for me. And I remember when I was little, my mom taking me to the live show. And so there were these 3 and 4 year olds that had never been to a play or to Sesame Street Live. And basically, I just asked Yale, don't know what the office was called, but I had to write one paragraph about why I wanted the money and how I would use it. And basically, they gave me the money to take the whole Head Start to Sesame Street Live, and riding on the bus with the 3 and 4 year olds and the teachers, and how appreciative they were. And that was definitely one of my best memories at Yale, was just how easy they made that and how appreciative the kids were.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. It's fantastic, right? It reminds me that I should probably schedule a trip to see Sesame Street Live with my kid now. Anyone else?
Yeah, well, I just want to make sure to add just to remind everyone about using alumni as a resource. I think Lisa might have brought that up, but first of all, through First Gen Yale, there are so many First Gen low income alums who are eager to help, provide advice, anything. So definitely, stay connected with that. Also, last year, Yale Alumni Association launched their online cross-campus tool that allows students to sign up for mentorships with alums. And, there's no reason to delay on that and beginning that networking, because there are lots of alums out there who are really eager to help and have lots of valuable information to share. So I hope that everyone will consider that as a resource as well.
So the consensus is that if you want to do something here at Yale, if there isn't a club that already exists or some kind of activity geared towards it, you can probably get it done, right? You can put a proposal in for funding, right? Get a group of people to do it, and can make it happen, right? So dream big, dream big. So I think we're up to our last question here. All right, and it's an important one. What is the one piece of advice which you would like to share with our current FSY students? Everyone has to jump in with something.
One piece of advice that I love giving students who are beginning their college career is more so of a fun one, but it's more so we all have like crazy cameras on our phones. So record a lot of these moments that are really cool throughout your college experience. Throughout the 4 years, I have this 1 terabyte of hard drive that has a bunch of random memories, Snapchats, videos, pictures, just really random stuff, screenshots of funny messages, whatever it may be. But I think that's definitely one thing I would recommend to anyone is just record your entire experience there, because it's going to end in 4 years. And you want to be able to have some resource to go back to and look back on it.
I love that archival impulse. Ryan.
Yeah, I think I'll touch on something Harley mentioned earlier. Once you leave Yale, it's harder to meet people. It's harder to try new things. It's harder to do stuff. Yale is the time of your life where you can do anything. Like, take classes you didn't think you would take, talk to people you wouldn't normally talk to, try things, find yourself at Yale. And I think it's a safe place, and there's so many resources and there's so many directions you can go while you're out there that just don't exist in real life after Yale. So I would just, really, really advise everyone to fully embrace that and just take all the opportunities that are available to you during your time there, and grow as a person, because you probably want to experience the type of growth that you will while you're at Yale once you leave, at least to that extent. So just embrace it 100%.
I would echo that, and again, not being afraid to ask for help. All of you you all belong here, there, I guess I should say, because here is at my house in Virginia. But you all belong there. You all belong at Yale. Don't let anyone make you feel like you don't. The powers that be looked over your essays, looked over your scores. All of you were interviewed, etc. And there's something unique and special that you bring to Yale. Yale has done an incredible job of bringing a class together of unique individuals that have something to contribute to the campus, and more importantly, something to contribute to the world. And so don't let anyone tell you differently. Acknowledge the fact that you belong there, and take full advantage of everything that's available, because it is incredibly short. And obviously I have to go and get the door.
Oh, thanks, Mukunda. I actually, she was spot on about everything. Just two things. First of all, I know we're all talking about use Yale's resources, use everything, take advantage of everything. But I also wanted to have a word of caution before my final advice. But one word of caution is that feeling leaves you feeling overwhelmed, like, oh my gosh, you don't have enough time to do this and take advantage of this resource. Like, everything is going to be okay. Yes, try to. But if you miss out on some things, you're still going to be amazingly successful. You don't have to take advantage of every single thing and feel that pressure. And I mean, just my word of caution about that. Do what you can, do more than I did for sure, but you don't have to feel like you have to, accomplish all those things. But my one piece of advice, and I thought about, and it might be particularly relevant for those of you who might struggle with anxiety, depression, or things like that, but maybe for others as well. But I would say be mindful of the false assumptions in your own mind. That darkness I was talking about, that I experienced, particularly my first year. A lot of that came from me not being aware of just some major false assumptions from basically just lies in my mind, not realities. My mind lied to me that I wasn't worthy. Now that I'm older, I can see that I was extraordinary, and so are you, just like Mukunda was talking about. Don't wait like I did until you're older to figure this out. Really let that pride sink in. my mind also lied to me about what other people thought of me, about that I was so different from these other students. But you know what? So many students at Yale feel like outsiders. So many people feel that imposter syndrome, not just first-gen low-income students. There's many different types of adversity. We know a particular kind, but many people fight their own silent battles that no one sees. So I hope that you can do what I didn't, and really see the best in yourself and see the best in everyone around you, really looking at what you share and those commonalities rather than focusing on all the differences. And I think if you can do that, it'll really go a long way towards keeping darkness at bay and really making the most of this amazing time you have coming ahead.
Okay, I'm going to jump in here and say that I maybe didn't make use of Yale's resources as much as I probably should have, or like professors or grad students, things like that. I'm going to say I still turned out okay, but I do want to plug that if you are that kind of person, that, you know, if you are intimidated, well, one, I think you should still try it and go talk to these wonderful professors, grad students, take advantage of the resources. But if you want to just like start maybe like, you know, in a more casual environment, I have gotten so many resources, so much help with like interviews, jobs, just literally everything from a lot of my peers, like people in my same year, people, you know, a year or two above, people who weren't even, you know, that close to me, but were in my major, and they found out that I was interested in something that they were interested in, and they just like passed along opportunities. And I want to say that for me, that was my like saving grace, because I wasn't comfortable, or sometimes I was just overwhelmed with everything that Yale was offering, that I couldn't, you know, sift through all of that and make a decision for myself. So it was so much easier to have friends and everyone just kind of like know what your interests are, know what you're kind of leaning towards, and like offer you a help, and also just like be open to help, you know, as we've all been saying. So that would be my plug, that if you're not comfortable or you want to start somewhere else, your peers, I think the people at Yale are really what make it so amazing. The resources, blah, 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 everything else is great. But the people are just incredible. And I don't think you're going to find people like that anywhere else. So make use of them. And they can be your friends. They can be, you know, just your suite mates. It doesn't have to always be like a professor or like a tutor or something like that.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, alumni, for this wonderful panel. I can already tell that our July 24th in-person meeting will be super dynamic with students asking questions in real time. Again, I really appreciate you taking the time. I'm grateful, and I know our FSYers are as well. I'm going to kick it over to Patty now to help wind this down.
Thank you, Professor Laguna, and all of the panelists. To the current students, thank you for listening. I hope that the discussion piqued your interest in speaking more with these panelists on July 24th and with the other alums who will join us then. We all look forward to being with you in real time, to hearing from you, answering your questions, listening to your stories, and welcoming you into the Yale family. See you all on the 24th. And now I'm going to kick it to Lisa.
Thank you, alumni and Professor Laguna, for your incredible discussion of your experiences and way you navigated through Yale and beyond. We are so proud of you and all that you've done, and especially for the students tonight. Yale's an incredible place. And for the students just entering Yale, the FSY students for this year, 2021, you guys have incredible gifts and talents. Each one of you has something special, actually many things that are special. One of those things is resilience and overcoming what you've overcome to get to a place like Yale. You have incredible gifts to share. So we just want to encourage you to take advantage of First Gen Yale alumni and all alumni at Yale, as well as the faculty and staff, to be there. We are here for you. We want to help you succeed and do whatever we can as we're part of the Yale family. So thanks again to our alumni panelists, Mukunda, Yvette, Harley, Ryan, Professor Laguna, and especially Patty, for being a co-chair of the 2021 FSY alumni panel. And thank you all for your contributions tonight. Be sure to join us at our events, First Gen Yale. You will get lots of invitations during the year. Come meet alumni like these incredible alumni, as well as so many others who will share with you their life stories, give you advice on career and life skills, and just kind of be there for you in any way we can. So thanks again. join us and check out our website, firstgenyale.org, as well as all our social media channels. And we can't wait to meet you in person. So see you again. See you soon, starting on Saturday, July 24th. But most of all, have a wonderful experience this summer and welcome to Yale. Thank you.